Welcome to the Radio Revenue Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am really excited to dig into this one.
Because usually, when I pick up a 10K from a massive pharmaceutical company, I expect a very specific kind of boredom.
Right.
Like, I expect pages of chemical formulas that I definitely can't pronounce, endless lists of patents, and maybe some really dry, cautious commentary on FDA trials.
Oh, absolutely. It's usually a tough read.
Right. But then I started reading the 2025 annual report for Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, and I have to say, my expectations were completely blown out of the water.
I assume you found something a little more cinematic in there.
Cinematic is exactly the word. This doesn't read like a science report. It reads like the season finale of a high-stakes legal drama mixed with a supply chain thriller.
It really does.
I mean, we have blockbuster drugs making billions. We have lawsuits against partners who are technically supposed to be their best friends. We have the President of the United States sending angry letters.
Yeah, that was wild.
And we have a factory inspection in Indiana that somehow manages to derail a cancer cure.
It's really a perfect storm. So, just for everyone listening, we are looking at the Form 10K for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2025.
Yes.
And you're right to highlight the drama because the mission of this deep dive isn't just to look at the molecules. Our goal here is to understand how a company that is arguably the best in the world at discovering drugs is struggling with the messy, gritty reality of actually selling them.
It's the friction between the pristine lab coat and the muddy boots of the business world.
Precisely. We are going to unpack the big three franchises driving their revenue, which are Eylea, DUPIXENT, and Libtayo.
The heavy hitters.
Exactly. But we are also going to look at the patent cliff they're facing, the manufacturing nightmares they didn't see coming, and the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Which is, yes, that is the real name.
That is the real name. And it's significantly changing their tax bill.
Let's start with the headline numbers, just to ground you. On the surface, if you just glanced at the first page, 2025 looked fine. Total revenues hit $14.3 billion.
Right.
Which is up a tick from $14.2 billion the year before. And they cleared, in pure net income, $4.5 billion.
Which is an enviable position for almost any company. I mean, $4.5 billion in profit is nothing to sneeze at.
No, definitely not.
But in the biotech world, flat growth is dangerous. If you aren't growing, you're dying. Because your patents are always ticking down toward expiration like a clock on a bomb.
Yeah.
Investors don't pay for what you did yesterday. They pay for what you're going to do tomorrow.
And that brings us to the first major battlefield in this report, and probably the biggest source of anxiety for the company.
The Eylea franchise.
Eylea, yes.
For you listeners who don't follow the eye care market closely, Eylea has been the golden goose for years. It treats wet, age-related macular degeneration. Basically, it saves grandmothers from going blind.
It has been the absolute standard of care. For over a decade, if you had WAMD, you got Eylea.
But 2025 was the year the fortress walls started crumbling. This is the classic patent cliff scenario. Exclusivity runs out, and the wolves come to the door.
The report puts a pretty brutal number on that crumbling, too. Sales of the legacy Eylea product, the standard dose everyone has used for a decade, crashed by 42% in the U.S.
Massive drop.
They fell to $2.7 billion.
Yeah.
That is a massive chunk of revenue to just vanish in 12 months.
Right.
If my income dropped 42%, I'd be panic selling my house.
It is a total freefall, and we need to be clear about why it's happening. It isn't just one competitor. It is a pincer movement. On one side, you have biosimilars.
Can we define that quickly? Because people hear generic and biosimilar, and they think they are the same thing.
Good catch. So a generic is for a simple chemical drug like aspirin or ibuprofen. It's an exact atomic copy.
Easy to make.
Right. A biosimilar is for a biologic drug, which is grown inside living cells. It's incredibly complex. You can't copy it perfectly, but you can get it close enough that the FDA says it works the same. Biosimilars are now flooding the market for Eylea, and they are significantly cheaper, which insurance companies absolutely love.
But the report mentions another threat that sounded even stranger to me. Compounded bevacizumab. I felt like I was trying to summon a demon just saying that out loud.
It does sound a bit arcane. This is the other side of the pincer. Bevacizumab is actually a cancer drug.
Okay.
But eye doctors realized years ago that if you take a tiny amount of it and repackage it into small vials, it works for the eye too.
Wow.
And because it is effectively off-label use of an older cancer drug, it costs pennies compared to the brand name Eylea.
So you have insurance companies pushing the biosimilars, and you have cost-conscious patients or their doctors switching to the repackaged cancer drug. The 10K actually explicitly blames patient affordability constraints for losing market share to this compound.
Which is corporate speak for, we are too expensive for the current economy.
Exactly.
When patients are choosing between rent and their eye injections, the cheaper option wins.
So Regeneron isn't stupid. They knew this was coming. Their play was to cannibalize their own product, right? Move everyone to LEHD before the competitors could steal them.
The high-dose strategy, it's classic life cycle management. LEHD contains 4 times the medication. The selling point is brilliant in its simplicity.
Fewer needles in your eye.
Exactly. Fewer needles in your eye.
Which, to be fair, is a very strong selling point. I would buy that.
Incredibly strong. Instead of going to the doctor every month or 2, you might go every 3 or 4 months. That's huge for quality of life.
And the data shows it's working, to an extent. Eylea brought in $1.6 billion in the U.S. in 2025.
It is gaining traction. They are frantically trying to ferry passengers from the sinking ship of legacy Eylea to the new luxury liner of Eylea.
I love that analogy.
But, and here's where the story gets really messy, they hit an iceberg.
Manufacturing snag. I found this part infuriating just reading it. It felt like watching an Olympic sprinter trip over their own shoelaces right before the finish line.
It is the definition of an unforced error, but it wasn't even their error. That's the frustration.
So let's unpack this for you. To sell this new high-dose version effectively, doctors want a pre-filled syringe. They don't want to mess around drawing liquid from a vial with a separate needle. They want to pop a cap and inject.
Right. Convenience is king in a busy clinic.
Exactly. So Regeneron applied to the FDA for this pre-filled syringe.
And the FDA sent back a CRL, a complete response letter, which is a rejection.
But not because the drug didn't work.
No. The drug is fine. The syringe design is fine. The rejection was entirely due to ongoing inspection findings at a third-party filler, a company called Turbulence, specifically their facility in Indiana.
So let me get this straight. Regeneron has a blockbuster drug. They have the patients. They have the doctors willing to switch. But because their contractor in Indiana had, I don't know, a messy floor or bad record keeping, the FDA shut down the approval.
Messy kitchen is a fair analogy. The FDA does not mess around with sterility. If the facility has systemic issues, maybe it's air filtration, maybe it's how they clean the equipment, anything coming out of that facility is suspect.
Wow.
The tragedy for Regeneron is that they were just one client of that facility. They got caught in the crossfire of a general inspection.
And the report says this forced them to switch manufacturers entirely. They had to pick up their toys and move to a different sandbox.
Which is not fast. You can't just drive the truck down the street to a new factory. You have to validate the new line, run test batches, prove stability, and then resubmit to the FDA.
Brutal.
They are now hoping for approval in the second quarter of 2026. That is a year of delay. In a market where you are losing 42% of your legacy sales, a year is an eternity.
It really highlights how fragile these supply chains are. You can have Nobel Prize-winning science, but if you can't get the liquid into the glass tube, you have zero revenue.
It's a harsh lesson in logistics. But while Eylea is struggling with logistics, their other giant, DUPIXENT, is struggling with something else entirely.
Success.
Massive success.
DUPIXENT. The numbers here are just staggering. I had to reread them to make sure I wasn't seeing extra zeros.
It is a juggernaut. We are talking about an immunology drug that treats eczema, asthma, and a growing list of other conditions. In 2025, global sales recorded by their partner, Sanofi, were $18.3 billion.
$18.3 billion. That is bigger than the GDP of many small nations. And Regeneron just collects a check.
Well, they do more than collect a check. They co-developed it, and they do a lot of the science. But yes, financially, their share of the profits was $5.2 billion.
Unbelievable.
And the scary part, at least for competitors, is that it's still growing. The report highlights a new approval for COPD.
Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Smoker's cough.
Exactly. It's a massive patient population that has had very few new treatments in decades. Breaking into the COPD market with a biologic drug is like discovering a new continent. It opens up billions in potential future revenue because these patients are chronic. They need treatment for life.
So let's look at this relationship. You have a product making $18 billion. You have a partner, Sanofi, who is helping you sell it globally. You'd think they would be best friends. You'd think they'd be having dinner together every night and toasting their success.
You would think. But in November 2024, Regeneron sued Sanofi.
This is the aha moment of the report for me. They filed a lawsuit in the Southern District of New York against the partner that is handing them $5 billion a year. Why? Are they just greedy?
It comes down to the classic tension of co-opetition. Regeneron claims Sanofi is breaching their collaboration agreement. The specific language in the filing is that Sanofi failed to provide full access to material information regarding commercialization.
What does that mean in plain English? You aren't showing us the receipts.
Essentially, yes. And critically, Regeneron claims Sanofi is blocking their audit rights. When you are splitting a pie that is 18 billion large, the accounting of expenses becomes incredibly important.
Oh, I see.
If Sanofi claims they spent 1 billion on marketing in Europe, Regeneron pays a share of that expense. If Regeneron suspects Sanofi actually only spent 800 million, or that they spent the money inefficiently, or they're hiding rebates, well, that is a dispute worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's like having a roommate who buys the groceries but refuses to show you the receipt and then asks you for $500.
A very rich roommate who is also a massive pharmaceutical giant, yes.
Right.
It creates this bizarre dynamic where they are locked in a marriage. They can't leave because the drug is too valuable, but they are actively fighting in court. It shows that at this scale, trust is good, but audit rights are better.
So Eylea is fighting the supply chain. DUPIXENT is fighting the partner. What about the future? Because eventually, even DUPIXENT's patents will expire. We need to look at the pipeline.
The pipeline in 2025 was a mix of heartbreak and science fiction. Let's start with the heartbreak. They were trying to create DUPIXENT 2.0 for COPD with a new drug called idepecumab.
I tried to pronounce that 3 times before the show and gave up. It sounds like a spell from a fantasy novel.
It's a mouthful. And unfortunately, the data was a massive headache. They ran 2 identical phase 3 trials. Phase 3 is the final, most expensive hurdle before approval. In the first trial, ARESRFY1, the drug worked. It reduced acute exacerbations by 27%.
Which is a home run. That's a huge success.
It is. But in the second trial, AREFIY, run exactly the same way with the same protocols, it failed. It didn't beat the placebo statistically.
How is that even possible? If I bake a cake twice using the exact same recipe, I get the same cake. How do you get a cure in one room and a dud in the other?
That is the dark art of clinical trials. It creates massive uncertainty. It could be chance. It could be that the patients in the second group were slightly sicker or had different genetic backgrounds. Or maybe the placebo group just happened to do unusually well. But for an investor, this is a nightmare. The report says they are evaluating next steps. But usually the FDA wants to see 2 positive trials. 1 win and 1 loss is a tie, and in drug approval, a tie usually goes to the reject pile.
So that's a wait and see. But what about the rest of the pipeline? They have oncology, right?
Yes, oncology is a bright spot. Libtayo grew to $1.45 billion globally. And they have fianlimab, which is a new melanoma drug, a LAG3 antibody. We are expecting data on that in the first half of 2026.
Okay, good. But let's talk about the science fiction part, the hearing loss therapy. This stopped me in my tracks. I had to put the report down and just think about it for a second.
VB-OTO. This is arguably the most exciting science in the entire report, even if it's not the biggest moneymaker yet.
We are talking about gene therapy for children born deaf, right?
Yeah. Specifically for children with a mutation in the otoferlin gene. It's a very specific genetic defect where the ear structure is actually fine, but the gene that helps transmit the signal to the brain is broken.
And what does DVOTO actually do?
It uses a harmless virus, a viral vector, to carry a functional copy of that gene and injects it directly into the inner ear. It literally installs the missing software.
That is insane. And the report mentions they published data in the New England Journal of Medicine.
Which is the gold standard. You don't get into the NEJM with fluff. They showed that children treated with this therapy are actually regaining hearing. We are talking about reversing a congenital condition. A child who lived in silence is now reacting to their parents' voices.
That is the promise of biotech that we always hear about but rarely see so clearly. It actually gives me chills.
It is incredible. They expect an FDA decision in the first half of 2026. If approved, it validates their entire gene therapy platform. It proves they can deliver genetic payloads safely and effectively.
But, and I really hate to be the bearer of bad news again, didn't the manufacturing curse strike the pipeline too?
Sadly, yes. There is a lymphoma drug called odronextamab.
Another tongue twister. They really need a new naming department.
They really do. It was ready for launch. It treats follicular lymphoma and diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. These are serious cancers. And the FDA issued a CRL, a rejection.
Let me guess. Catalent.
Catalent.
Unbelievable.
The exact same facility in Indiana that blocked the Eylea syringe. Because of the issues there, the FDA refused to approve the lymphoma drug.
This is what I mean about the narrative of this report.
Yeah.
You have a potential cure for cancer patients sitting on a shelf gathering dust, not because the science failed, but because the factory inspection failed. It makes you realize that biotech is really 50% biology and 50% technology and manufacturing.
Exactly.
And if the manufacturing side fails, the biology is worthless.
It is a profound vulnerability, and I think 2025 was the year Regeneron realized they cannot rely so heavily on third parties. You will likely see them bringing more of this in-house in the future, but that takes years and billions of dollars to build.
Now, we've covered the labs and the factories. We have to cover the courtroom one more time. Because the Sanofi lawsuit wasn't the only legal battle. There was a massive antitrust case involving Amgen.
Right. This was a major victory for Regeneron mentioned in the legal proceedings section. It goes back to their cholesterol drug, Praluent. For years, they felt Amgen was playing dirty.
Playing dirty how?
Through anti-competitive bundling. Essentially, Amgen has a huge portfolio of drugs. Regeneron alleged that Amgen went to insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers and said, look, if you want our other blockbuster drugs that you need to have, you have to block Regeneron's cholesterol drug. You can't buy one without blocking the other.
That sounds remarkably like a shakedown, like nice pharmacy you have here. Shame if you couldn't stock our arthritis meds.
The jury thought so too. In May 2025, they awarded Regeneron $135.6 million in compensatory damages. But the real headline was the punitive damages. They slapped Amgen with an additional $271.2 million.
Punitive damages are the legal system's way of saying, we are angry.
Exactly. It is a punishment for bad behavior. It sends a signal to the entire industry that bundling schemes are going to be scrutinized. It is a nice cash infusion for Regeneron, but more importantly, it opens up the market for Praluent to finally compete on merit rather than being locked out by contracts.
So they beat Amgen. But can they beat the government? We have to talk about the legislation mentioned in the report. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
The OBBA, signed in July 2025.
I still can't believe that's the real acronym. It sounds like something a writer made up for a satire show.
It is certainly distinct. But names aside, this bill was a double-edged sword for Regeneron. On the positive side, it restored immediate expensing for R&D.
Which means if they spend $1 billion on research, they can deduct it from their taxes immediately, rather than spreading it out over 5 years. That encourages innovation. That's the beautiful part.
Correct. But the catch was international tax. The bill changed the calculation for net CFC-tested income.
That sounds incredibly dry, but I suspect it matters a lot to a company with headquarters in New York and huge operations in Ireland.
It matters to the tune of $44.5 million. That was the specific charge Regeneron took because of this change. It essentially closes some of the loopholes for parking profits in low-tax jurisdictions like Ireland. It's the government saying, if you benefit from American R&D credits, we want to tax your global profits more aggressively.
And speaking of the government wanting things, we have the most favored nation issue. This felt like a direct shot across the bow.
This is the pressure on pricing. In May 2025, there was an executive order, and then in July 2025, President Trump sent a letter demanding that companies provide most favored nation rates to Medicaid.
Basically, if you sell Eylea to France for $500, you can't charge Medicaid $2,000.
Precisely. And for Regeneron, this is a distinct threat. Their revenue is heavily weighted toward the U.S. market. They book the U.S. sales, while their partners often handle the rest of the world.
Right.
If U.S. prices are forced down to match international levels, their profit margins compress instantly. They don't have a massive volume of sales in Europe to offset that drop.
It seems like every way they turn, there is a hand reaching into their pocket. The government wants lower prices and higher taxes. The partner Sanofi wants to hide the receipts. The competitors want to bundle them out of existence.
And yet, despite all of that, despite the friction, the lawsuits, the factory failures, they still profited $4.5 billion.
It is a testament to the sheer power of the drugs. If the product is good enough, if it saves vision or clears eczema, the money flows, even if the pipes are leaky.
That is the big takeaway for you. The core engine, the VelociSuite technology that discovers these drugs, is firing on all cylinders. The VB-OTO gene therapy proves they haven't lost their touch for innovation. They're still the best scientists in the room.
But the lesson of 2025 seems to be that innovation isn't enough anymore.
It isn't. I would summarize the state of Regeneron as a company with scientific mastery but operational fragility. They can invent the future, but they're struggling to navigate the present.
That's a powerful distinction. Looking ahead to 2026, what are you watching for? Is it the gene therapy approval?
That will be the headline. But honestly, I'm watching the boring stuff. I want to see if they get the Eylea HD syringe approved. I want to see if they settle with Sanofi. I want to see if they can fix the plumbing.
It's funny, we start these deep dives looking for scientific breakthroughs, and we end up rooting for supply chain managers.
That is the reality of business at this scale. The best science in the world doesn't matter if it's stuck in a warehouse in Indiana.
That is a provocative thought to leave you with.
Ugh.
We often think of biotech as a battle of wits, like who has the smartest scientists. But maybe in the end, it's a battle of logistics. Who has the cleanest factories and the tightest contracts?
It certainly looks that way for Regeneron. If they can clear the operational hurdles, they're golden. If they keep tripping over their own supply chain, the science won't save them.
Well, there you have it. A fascinating look under the hood of a pharma giant. Not just molecules, but money, manufacturing, and mayhem.
A pleasure to break it down with you.
It was a Revenue Radio podcast. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated with our latest analyses.